Every year, the Okafor family would pack up their belongings and travel from the bustling city of Lagos to their hometown in a village tucked away in southeastern Nigeria. Christmas in the village had become a cherished tradition, where the whole family could reconnect with relatives and celebrate the holiday in the most authentic way, away from the hustle and bustle of urban life. Chucks, the father, was a hard-working man who loved his family but never fully understood the importance of prayer. He had always been a practical man, focused on getting things done. Prayer, in his eyes, was more of a formality that didn't seem to change much about life. However, his wife Ife, who had grown up in a deeply spiritual family, was the complete opposite. She loved to pray and believed it kept their family grounded, especially when they traveled long distances. On the eve of their departure, Ife sat the kids down to say a prayer before they left for the village. "Please, Lord, protect us as we travel. Keep us safe and bring us back home in peace," Ife prayed softly, her voice full of warmth and faith. Chucks, on the other hand, stood by the door, tapping his foot impatiently. He had been through this ritual many times before, but he never really understood why Ife insisted on it. "Must we pray every time we travel, Ife?" he asked, his tone laced with impatience. Ife smiled gently and nodded. "It's not just about the journey, Chucks. It's about trusting God to guide us, to keep us safe in His hands." Chucks rolled his eyes but didn't argue further. He was used to Ife's faith by now, and though he didn't share it, he respected it in his own way. The family set off early the next morning, the car packed with suitcases, Christmas gifts, and food. The road from Lagos to their village was long, winding, and sometimes treacherous, especially during the festive season when everyone was traveling. Ife, as always, whispered a quick prayer before they began the journey. The children, as excited as they were, sat in the back, chatting and laughing with their mother. The car hummed along the road, and Chucks, though quiet, focused on the drive. He kept a watchful eye on the road, but deep inside, a sense of unease lingered. It wasn't that he was scared, it was just that he never fully understood why Ife's prayers were so important. Halfway through their journey, just as the sun began to set, disaster struck. A truck coming from the opposite direction lost control and swerved into their lane. The screech of tires and the crash of metal filled the air in a split second. Chuck swerved sharply to avoid a direct collision, but the force of the impact caused the car to spin out of control and crash into a nearby ditch. The sound of the crash echoed in Ife's ears, and for a moment everything went still. She looked around quickly, heart racing. Her children were crying softly, but they were unharmed. She checked herself, not a scratch. Her heart sank when she turned to look at Chucks, who was slumped against the side of the car, his face pale and blood trickling down his forehead. "Oh no! Chucks!" Ife screamed in panic, rushing to his side. Chucks groaned, his eyes fluttering open. He was in pain but conscious. "I'm okay, just a scratch," he muttered, trying to reassure her, though he was clearly shaken. Ife immediately prayed out loud, her voice trembling as she called on God for protection. "Lord, please heal him. Please keep my husband safe." Miraculously, the children were unharmed, their tears the only sign of the trauma they had just witnessed. Ife comforted them while she tried to tend to Chucks, all the while whispering prayers for his recovery. A good Samaritan stopped to help, and soon the authorities arrived. Chucks was taken to the nearest hospital, where doctors treated him for his injuries. Thankfully, the wounds weren't severe, and he would recover with time. As Ife sat beside him in the hospital, her heart still racing, she whispered to Chucks, "See, Chucks. God was with us. We are alive, and you're going to be fine." My prayers were heard. Chucks, still groggy from the shock, looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Ife, maybe you're right. Maybe there's something to your prayers after all." Ife smiled softly, holding his hand. "It's not about me, Chucks. It's about our faith in something bigger than ourselves." The rest of the family made it to the village in time for Christmas, albeit a little later than planned. Despite the accident, the Okafor family celebrated the holiday with even more gratitude than usual, surrounded by love, family, and the knowledge that they had been spared from a far worse fate. As Chucks recovered, he came to understand the power of Ife's prayers, and though he didn't fully embrace them, he had a newfound respect for her faith. The accident had shaken him, but it also made him realize that sometimes, there are things in life that go beyond understanding, things that only faith can explain. As the days passed and Chuck slowly recovered from his injuries, life in the village resumed its usual rhythm. The family was together, and Christmas was as joyful as ever. But the peace and happiness that the Okafors felt in the village were shadowed by a secret that no one knew, a dark force that had been brewing in the background. In the city, Chuck's uncle, Obi, had been struggling for years. Obi had always lived in the city, trying to make a living for himself and his children. But despite his best efforts, life had been tough. His children were unable to find stable work, and his own business was failing. There had been whispers of other family members doing better, and Obi had grown bitter. His pride was hurt, and the nagging thought that he couldn't provide for his family like his relatives did made him desperate. In his desperation, Obi turned to darker forces, seeking a way to change his luck. He visited a mysterious woman who was said to have connections with the Marine Kingdom, an ancient and powerful spiritual force known to some as the source of unimaginable power. Obi's heart was heavy with his desire for success, and the woman promised him that if he gave his soul to the marine spirits, he would receive the wealth and prosperity he longed for. But the price would be steep, his actions would cause suffering for someone he loved. Obi hesitated at first, but the allure of power, of wealth for his children, was too great to resist. He agreed to the deal, his mind clouded with greed. The spirits, in return for his soul, promised that Chucks would be harmed during his journey to the village. The accident would serve as a reminder of how far Obi had gone to secure his future, even if it meant bringing misfortune to others. The deal was struck. When Chucks and his family were on the road, Obi's malicious wish was set into motion. The truck that swerved into their lane, causing the crash, wasn't just a random accident. It was the result of dark forces working against them, pushed by Obi's desperate wish for wealth. But the marine spirits, in their twisted way, had made sure that the accident only caused enough harm to get Chucks injured, not fatal. His suffering was meant to be a sacrifice, a lesson. When Chucks began to recover in the village, Obi, back in the city, felt a strange unease. At first, he believed the power he had sought had worked, Chucks was hurt, and the accident had been a sign of his power. But as the days passed, the guilt began to eat away at him. The more he thought about it, the more he realized what a terrible mistake he had made. The spirits had promised him power, but they had taken much more than he had bargained for. He felt a dark presence surrounding him, growing stronger with each passing day. It wasn't long before Obi fell ill. His health deteriorated rapidly, as if the deal he had struck with the marine spirits was now collecting its price. Obi's children, who had been struggling, now found themselves without the father who had been their only hope for a better life. They watched helplessly as their father's once strong body withered away. It seemed as though the spirits had claimed him as payment for the harm he had wished on his brother's family. One evening, Obi's children found him in his room, feverish and delirious, murmuring strange words in a voice that wasn't quite his own. The guilt and fear consumed him. "I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Please forgive me. Chucks. Iferi," he whispered, as though his soul was being torn apart. Despite their best efforts, Obi passed away quietly in the night, his body cold and his soul now lost to the marine spirits that had promised him power in exchange for his very essence. The funeral was a somber affair, with no one speaking of the terrible secret behind his death. But Obi's children, left to fend for themselves, could not shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. As Chucks continued to recover in the village, his heart heavy with the realization that someone had wished harm upon him, he couldn't understand why. It wasn't until the whispers began circulating in the family, and the truth was slowly revealed, that he understood the true cause of the accident. Ife, ever the believer in prayer, wasn't surprised that the forces of darkness had worked against them. "We were protected, Chucks. We survived because of God's grace," she said softly one evening, her eyes filled with both sorrow and strength. Chucks looked at her, a mixture of relief and regret in his heart. "I don't know what to say, Ife. It's hard to believe anyone could wish harm on us, especially family. Ife," he continued, "I'm starting to understand, maybe your prayers really do work. Maybe they saved us." She nodded, her eyes warm. "It wasn't just me, Chucks. It was our faith. And God's protection." As Chuck sat quietly in the village, reflecting on the strange and tragic events that had unfolded, he realized how fragile life was. What had seemed like a simple Christmas journey had turned into a story of survival, faith, and the dangerous consequences of greed and malice. Obi's death served as a painful reminder that the pursuit of power could cost more than anyone was willing to pay. And though Chucks didn't fully understand the spiritual world his wife so deeply believed in, he knew one thing for certain: prayer, love, and faith had kept his family safe when the world seemed to conspire against them. Christmas in the village, though bittersweet, became a symbol of resilience for the Okafor family. They celebrated not only the birth of Christ but also the gift of life, of protection, and of the strength that came from faith, something that no dark force could ever take away. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share and subscribe to this channel for more enchanting stories like this. Thanks for watching.